Every morning, vehicles stop at a set of traffic lights, wait for a signal, and then drive across an active commercial runway. Not a taxiway, not a road that passes near a runway. The actual strip of asphalt where jets accelerate to takeoff speed and touch down at landing. This happens in Gibraltar, on a peninsula so narrow that the airport's single runway stretches the full width of the land, and there is simply nowhere else to put the road. Gibraltar is a British overseas territory clinging to the southern tip of the Iberian Peninsula. The rock itself is about 6.5 square kilometers of limestone. That is the entire territory. The peninsula is roughly shaped like a thumb, and most of its area is taken up by the rock's sheer cliffs and protected nature reserve. What flat, buildable land exists is concentrated at the northern end, just where Gibraltar connects to Spain. That strip of flat ground is less than a kilometer wide, and that is where the airport had to go. The airport officially serves the territory as Gibraltar International Airport, known previously as North Front Airport. The runway and aerodrome are owned by the Ministry of Defence and operated by the Royal Air Force as RAF Gibraltar, with civilian operators using a separate terminal. That dual military and civilian identity is not an accident. It is a direct product of how the airport was built and why. During World War II, the British needed Gibraltar operational as a military base. The airfield was constructed by reclaiming land from the sea along the narrow northern plain, using rubble from tunnels blasted through the rock itself. The fill and grading extended the usable flat area just enough to fit a single runway. But the geometry of the peninsula created an immediate and permanent problem. Winston Churchill Avenue, the main road connecting Gibraltar to the Spanish border, ran directly across the path of the only logical runway alignment. There was no corridor to route the road around the runway. The rock blocked any detour to the east, and the sea blocked any detour to the west. The road and the runway had to share the same ground. The wartime planners faced a choice that had no elegant option. They could abandon the runway, which would eliminate Gibraltar's utility as an airbase. They could close the road permanently, which would sever the territory's only land connection to Spain and isolate the civilian population. Or they could accept that both the runway and the road were necessary and find a way to make them take turns. The solution was not sophisticated. It was blunt and entirely deliberate. Traffic lights were installed at both ends of the runway crossing. When an aircraft needed to use the runway for takeoff or landing, the lights turned red, barriers came down, and all road traffic stopped. When the runway was clear, the lights turned green, and cars, trucks, and pedestrians crossed freely. The same strip of tarmac served both functions in strict rotation, one movement at a time. The trade-off was immediate and measurable. Every takeoff delayed road traffic. Every vehicle crossing delayed aircraft. The system had no slack. This arrangement is not a quirk that authorities have been trying to eliminate. It has been the operational reality for decades. The crossing sits at the northern threshold of the runway, meaning that vehicles cross almost exactly where aircraft begin their takeoff roll or complete their landing rollout. The clearances involved are tight enough that the timing of the signal system is not casual. Controllers at the airport coordinate the runway crossing closures with flight operations. When an aircraft is cleared to take the runway, the road closes. When the aircraft clears the runway after landing or completes its takeoff and is airborne, the road reopens. The practical consequence for drivers and pedestrians is a wait that can stretch several minutes during active flight operations. Gibraltar's airport handles scheduled commercial services, and the runway sees a regular pattern of arrivals and departures throughout the day. During peak periods, closures can occur in relatively quick succession. For anyone commuting between Gibraltar and the Spanish side of the border, crossing that road means accepting that an arriving EasyJet or British Airways aircraft might be the reason they sit at a red light. From a pure aviation safety standpoint, the arrangement works because the responsibility for sequencing is clearly assigned. Air traffic control holds authority over the runway. The road barriers are linked to that authority. A vehicle cannot legally enter the runway crossing while the barriers are down. The system does not rely on driver judgment at the runway threshold. It relies on a controlled, hard-closed barrier system that physically prevents access. That barrier becomes the margin of safety in a layout that has no physical separation. The airport is officially known now as Joshua Hassan Gibraltar International Airport, named for a former Chief Minister of Gibraltar. It continues to operate under a joint military and civilian model, with the National Air Traffic Services holding the contract for air navigation services. That institutional structure reflects the airport's origins. It was built for war, adapted for peace, and then inherited by a civilian territory that had no room to redesign the fundamental layout. The question that engineers and planners have periodically confronted is whether anything can actually change this situation. Building a tunnel under the runway to carry road traffic would require boring through reclaimed land close to sea level, with significant challenges related to groundwater and the structural loads of aircraft passing overhead. The fill material that forms the runway foundation is not solid bedrock. It is wartime rubble and compacted soil, resting on what was once seabed. A tunnel would have to be waterproofed, structurally independent of the runway above, and capable of handling the dynamic loads of landing aircraft without settlement or deformation. Building a bridge over the runway would require a structure tall enough to allow aircraft to pass beneath, which introduces obvious aeronautical complications and visual obstruction concerns on approach. The peninsula's geography hasn't changed. The rock is still there to the east. The Bay of Gibraltar is still there to the west. The flat land is still less than a kilometer wide. Any structure that physically separates the road from the runway would have to fit into that constrained envelope without compromising either function. That leaves little room for conventional solutions. There have been proposals and discussions over the years about constructing a tunnel link, particularly as part of broader agreements between the United Kingdom, Gibraltar, and Spain regarding border arrangements and transport infrastructure. Those discussions have been tied to political negotiations about Gibraltar's relationship with the European Union following the UK's departure, and about the future management of the Spanish-Gibraltarian border itself. The technical challenge of the tunnel is real, but the political and financial dimensions of any major infrastructure change at this crossing are at least as significant. A tunnel would not just separate road from runway. It would alter the physical experience of entering and leaving Gibraltar, with implications for border control, customs arrangements, and sovereignty perceptions that extend well beyond engineering. What makes Gibraltar's runway crossing worth understanding is not that it exists as an entertaining anomaly. It exists because geography imposed a constraint that could not be engineered away at the time of construction, and the subsequent decades have reinforced rather than resolved that constraint. Every flight that lands or departs from Gibraltar does so in the context of a road that crosses its runway. Every driver who crosses Winston Churchill Avenue during flight operations does so because the territory ran out of ground. The engineering lesson here is not about innovation. It is about the hard ceiling that physical geography places on design. When the available land is exhausted and the sea is on two sides and a sheer limestone cliff is on the third, the options narrow to what fits. The wartime builders fitted a runway onto the only flat ground available. The road was already there. Both were necessary. The traffic light at the end of a jet runway is what happens when necessity does not leave room for elegance. Today, aircraft still approach from the west over the bay, touch down, and roll out toward the northern end of the runway, where the barriers are down and the road waits. Then the barriers lift, the lights turn green, and the gap between aviation and ordinary daily life on that peninsula closes to a painted line on the tarmac. The crossing remains functional because both systems agreed to take turns and because the alternative was to abandon one or the other entirely. The question that tends to follow is whether any other airport in the world shares a comparable arrangement. There are a handful of places where roads pass extremely close to active runways, or where paths cross taxiways. But a public road crossing a live commercial runway with scheduled jet service, controlled by traffic lights and barriers, enforced as standard daily operating procedure, puts Gibraltar in a category that has no close parallel. The territory simply ran out of peninsula before it ran out of need. Visual reconstructions are illustrative. Facts and interpretations are based on the sources listed in the description.